So I've just been out to Paradise, California, which had the Camp Fire in 2018, to try to learn what are they doing to rebuild, because the insurance industry is very, very afraid of insuring people in Paradise. Yeah, sure. My mother always says I talk too loud, so I'm sorry. So I want to show you a few slides about this topic of insurance and Zone Zero, because when you have a lush home and yard, Zone Zero sounds awful, but I think as you see some images of what Zone Zero can be like, maybe it won't sound so awful, and it's a key to insuring your home. That's what this is all about. Next slide. Can I? Oh, I can switch them myself. Look at that. So the Institute for Building and Home Safety, IBHS, they have a website. They have a standard called the Wildfire Prepared Home. And they do an enormous amount of research on full-scale buildings that they build inside a research facility in South Carolina, and then they blow embers at these full-scale mock-ups with real materials to try to test what happens in a fire zone. And they have come up with this Wildfire Prepared Home standard because of those tests. And they're promoting building codes that have a Zone Zero with no vegetation and no wood chip mulch in it, no combustibles, because of the tests that they've done, not out of some conspiracy, but because they have really physically tested these things. And if you look on YouTube and search CAL FIRE and IBHS and demonstration, you'll see a recent demonstration they did here in California. I didn't want to take time for that video, but it's on YouTube and it's really informative. The point I wanted to make here too with this slide is that 76% of insurance policies written for private residences in the United States, those companies are members of IBHS. IBHS is a nonprofit research organization, and it makes its money through memberships, and the memberships are bought by insurance companies. So they're paying for the research that IBHS does. IBHS, through their full-scale research facility and all their testing, and it's pretty exhaustive, they have figured out what is the #1 reason for building loss in a wildfire. And it's not direct flame contact. It's embers. And that's why they are focused on the Zone Zero, because when embers get blown by high wind into that wood mulch or some other combustibles around your home, they start to burn, and then they burn up under your overhang, the roof overhang, and then the building starts to burn. So they're trying to keep all combustibles out of Zone Zero for good reason. What is this Wildfire Prepared Home standard? You probably have heard versions of different standards. This is the one the insurance company is investing in and recognizing, the insurance industry, at least the members of IBHS. And that isn't necessarily all of the insurance companies, but it's quite a number. It has a Zone Zero, 0 to 5 feet from the house, with nothing flammable in it. Not wood chips, not wooden furniture, nothing flammable within 5 feet of the house. And this is hard for a lot of people because most of us have some plant in that zone that has sentimental value. That's normal. And then Zone 1, so it's painful but normal, to have to remove something or transplant it or take a cutting from it that has significance for you personally. But then Zone 1 is a thinning problem. We are supposed to thin vegetation in Zone 1, which is the 5 to 30 foot zone. And then I'm not even going to talk about Zone 2 because most of our houses in Berkeley don't even have a Zone 2. That would be like 8 houses. So that's, a neighborhood conversation. So the reason that this is so important, and coming back to the last presentation, is that people in Paradise, this is a real story, real people, were paying $12,000 for insurance for their home through the California FAIR Plan. I don't know what the per square foot is. That would be an interesting question. But when they did their Zone Zero and their Zone 1 changes, they were able to persuade a company called Mercury Insurance to insure them for $1,000 a year instead of $12,000. So that justifies a fair amount of gravel. If you're going from paying $12,000 a year to $1,000 a year, that's worth it over several years, decades maybe. So that's what this is about. This is about being able to get private insurance with a standard plan instead of being in California's FAIR plan. So I just wanted to briefly say what's required in Zone 0. You have to have at least 6 inches of non-combustible siding on the house. Could be you already have a concrete foundation that's exposed for a foot, then you're good. But if you have wood down to the ground, you've got to cover that with some kind of fiberboard, like hardy board or stucco or something. Stucco counts as non-combustible. So you have to be non-combustible within 6 inches of the ground. If you have a deck or you have a large roof overhang, the Zone 0 requirement extends around that. Because remember, the whole point is not to let something be on fire under your roof overhang. And decks are one of the biggest sources of combustible material, wooden decks, that start the house on fire. So that's included in the Zone 0. You have to draw the boundary of it beyond the deck.
Is there anything that can be done to fireproof a deck, any kind of coating or?
I don't think they can take a deck out of the Zone 0 requirement. I haven't heard of anything. They do require a mesh around the bottom of the deck with such a fine opening that you can't put a nail through it, a standard nail size or a pencil size. So mesh has to be used to keep embers out from underneath the deck. But otherwise, I haven't heard of any fireproofing of decks except to use a metal deck. I'm going to take one more question, then try to keep going.
So when you say they require, who's the they?
The Insurance Institute for Building and Home Safety, which does this research, persuades insurance companies and municipalities and states to adopt building codes that require Zone 0 as part of their wildfire prepared home standard.
So there's no regulation for the local fire department to?
Berkeley has this EMBER program, which has a Zone 0 requirement also. So the Berkeley EMBER program comes out of this IBHS research, in part. I'm going to take one more question, then I'm going to go on. Go ahead.
So is this related, is there going to be a state law? This is what I'm hearing, that there's a state law that will be passed?
I hear it's been coming through the system, and since the LA fires, it's been accelerated, and we're all going to hear about it soon. But I think elected officials are afraid to tell everyone they've got to cut down that Cecil Bruner rose next to the house.
So this is not a law, this is recommendations to consider yourself Zone 0 and then argue to your insurance company migration.
That's right. So it's research that the insurance companies consider important. And it's how you get yourself insured by a private insurer, not the California FAIR Plan, but it is becoming regulation, for example, in Berkeley. So I think other communities will start adopting it. Thank you for those clarifications. I think that's helpful for everybody to hear. So one of the questions I get as a designer is, well, Zone 0 is going to feel like a concrete bunker. I don't want my house to feel like a concrete fortress or be surrounded by an ocean of gravel. So one of my jobs as a designer is to try to help people visualize what could that really be like in Zone 0. And then what would that be like in Zone 1, which is 5 feet to 30 feet, and how does it affect your curb appeal, which a lot of us care about. We're planning to sell a home at some point, and we don't want these changes to cause our home to lose value. So these images this image in particular comes from a book done about California landscapes, and it shows an example of a large gravel patio outside the house. This is not a book about fire-safe design. This is a book about nice California landscapes. I think this is the kind of thing that could be beautiful next to a house. It certainly is in some houses already, part of the way it's designed. You just have to not think of it as a 5-foot buffer rigidly enforced. You have to let that 5-foot zone get bigger for a patio in some areas and smaller so that it's just a utility corridor in others. And I think the color matters a lot. I did this little Photoshop alteration because I have put in gravel around my home, and I use a golden gravel because I think it's a lot cheerier. And gravel that's gray can be a turnoff to some people. I don't know, a lot of guys I know like gray. Women have not liked gray as much. So maybe this is a conversation to have with your spouse. Maybe we can go with the golden gravel. This is a house in Berkeley that was featured in Berkeley Side. Berkeley Side did a bunch of articles on design in the fire zone because Berkeley was adopting this new regulation with their EMBER program. You might look at those to get some ideas. This is a house owned by a family in the Berkeley Hills. They went with concrete around the house. They went with a golden colored concrete, and they made a patio zone, and then they have a zone that's mostly a utility zone. Personally, I think that tree planter is a little close to the house for Zone 0, but these images are available in the Berkeley Side article, so you can find it online. So you can see it's not a fortress. It's not a terrible future for all of us to have to implement a non-combustible Zone 0. One of the key things is to draw people's eye away using plantings and to have stuff in that zone that's touchable. Not everyone wants sculpture, but, you know, a bird bath with some moss and lichen on it, that could be a feature that you touch as you walk into the building, into your house. A lot of people like to have things that they touch as they go into their house and feel like the zone is furnished. And it can be, but only with things that won't burn. And the only plants allowed are lichens and mosses. Succulents are not allowed by the insurance industry plan. Yeah, not even. So we'll be doing paving around houses as well as gravel. This is a DIY example, somebody doing their own paved walkway with gravel and cheap pavers. This is a very inexpensive project. And then rain chains can add a little bling to Zone 0 as long as they're made of metal. They're like a little jewelry for your house. And you can have more than one and get a little reflective color in that zone. So it can be a vertical element, like a tree would have been, but it's a rain chain. So we start thinking about how do we add elements that can't burn. Gates and decorative screens, metal gates and decorative screens are required in Zone 0. Your fence, your wooden fence has to be replaced with a metal section or a metal gate and metal posts in that first 5 feet of the fence. But luckily, metal gates are not that expensive. I'm not selling any metal gates. This is from Wayside as an example, but they're not as bad as I thought they would be in price. So something to think about. And using decorative screens made of metal is also a good option for adding a little bling or a little personality to that. It doesn't have to be chain link, although you'll see people using that. This is a French estate home. And what I like about it as an example is it's all gravel, but it looks elegant and relaxing. It's kind of monochrome. There's no reason why you can't use gravel in a way that's relaxing and looks expensive, even though it's inexpensive. So metal and gravel are kind of a Mediterranean, European garden design strategy that we might think of instead of looking at English gardens as our model. Edging is a way to introduce something beautiful into that gravel. You've got the gravel on the right in each of these photos, and you've got some kind of edging on the left. Paving stones, river rock, a water feature in one case, and then planting in Zone 1. So it can be nice looking. It doesn't have to look like a big gravel driveway. A water feature, again, is really a good option for something that transitions from that gravel zone into Zone 1, and a water feature can be in Zone 0. I don't think you're going to need much mosquito abatement, but they sell these little cakes of stuff, really clever invention, that when you put it in the water, they sell them at hardware stores, when you put it in the water, it prevents mosquito larvae from reproducing. So there are anti-mosquito techniques that don't involve chemicals and are really good, and they work. So curb appeal, last point I want to make. So I mentioned there's a Zone 0, there's the Zone 1, Zone 3 is not really, Zone 2 is not really our problem because our yards aren't big enough. When you're looking through Zone 1 to the house, that's where you can create curb appeal. And in Zone 1, you can have all kinds of plants. You have to, ideally, separate the plantings into what are called islands or strips, where you have a walkway made of gravel or pavers or brick between the islands of plants. It's nice for maintenance, but it also helps if a fire catches in one island, it doesn't spread as easily to the next island. And there's no size guidelines. That's all up to you. And then we're being told by the insurance research people that cutting grass to a 4 inches or even 3 inches height is important if you're going to have a big lawn area. And then there are a few other little things I mentioned already. And then limbing up trees and separating the crowns of trees in that Zone 1 will also be important to the insurance folks. And I mentioned already going from 12,000 to 1,000 here. I'll skip this. This is a house in Paradise that's been rebuilt. And it looks like a typical suburban house. It's got a super big yard compared to what we have in Berkeley normally or other places around the East Bay. So picture it smaller, shrink it down in your mind. It has a big lawn, it's cut. It has a water feature in the Zone 0. And it uses a variety of materials to try to create interest in that zone. So I think it's even a 6-foot or 7-foot zone that they've implemented. There's a path, there's gravel, there's natural rock. But there are no plants. So it doesn't look terrible. It's actually interesting. It's kind of a nice, when you go to it, you don't even really realize it has a special zone. Here's another house in Paradise. This one I know went from 12,000 to 1,000 in insurance with this design. And they used a river rock design to make a kind of water feature for the rainy season, and then also make some interest from the street looking at the house. So it looks like a little dry stream bed coming out to the street. And that could have more plants in it that require more moisture. This is another house in Paradise. They have a big gravel driveway on the right, but then they've got very densely planted area to the left. There's a little vegetation near the house, but I think it's 6 feet from the actual wall of the house. So these are examples of lush plantings and interesting ideas that I think we could scale down to the size of houses in the East Bay. Here's a little house that put in an island of plants in front of their Zone 0 in their Zone 1 that acts like a screen, and it looks like a foundation planting around the house. But the house is actually surrounded by a Zone 0 with no plants. So it's like a theater set. You've got a layer in front that's got dense, lush vegetation, and then you've got your Zone 0 behind it that you can't see from the street. And then I wanted to show you a couple images from a student design competition. This is also linked to the Berkeley side articles about design in the Berkeley Hills. This is a similar idea to what I just showed you. This student did a lush planting zone in front of the house. The students are all going to be showing the same house, although they've painted it different colors in their images. And then behind that lush band of plants, there's a Zone 0 with no plants. Here's another example of that. The front plantings are in islands that are separated, and it looks pretty lush from the street, but if you were flying up to a bird's height, you'd be able to see that it's separate islands of plants. And that's what it looks like in their planting plan. It's hard to tell, but it's actually islands with paths in between them. You can see that more in this kind of 3D rendering, that the front is all separate islands of plants. That's what the insurance company wants to see. It's called islanding. New word that we'll all be learning. Islanding. In the backyard, they did islanding again as the part of their proposal. This is the team that won when the insurance company picked one of the student designs to win. They won because they also, not only did they do islanding, but they avoided something that's a bad thing, another new word, laddering. Laddering is bad, islanding is good. Laddering means you have tall plants on the ground level, you've got shrubs above those, and you've got trees with low branches above that. It's called laddering because a fire that starts on the ground from embers could go up into the shrub layer and up into the lower branches of trees and start the tree on fire. Then they've got a much bigger problem. So they want these islands to contain vegetation of just one height, not multiple layers vertically. no ladders. And here's another example where the students proposed identifying the zones with a concrete band around each zone so that the homeowner could remember, and when they rent the house or sell the house, the whole design would carry on with the house because the zones have been kind of built in, which might be important for thinking about a rental. And this is what they did, a similar kind of rain garden thing in the front to let there be taller plants in that irrigated, wetter soil, and then no plants behind it on the house side to the right. And one last design, I think, or maybe two, just showing the entry to the house with different looks and recognizing that it's going to take phasing. First you remove stuff and put in gravel, and then you add to it over time. To do all of this at once is usually prohibitively expensive. But to have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 over a 5-year period, as long as you've done phase 1, you could qualify for the insurance. Phase 1 being removal and installing gravel or concrete, some other non-combustible material. This is that same house. It's getting a little repetitive. Let me go to the last one, which is to show this one. The students did a really colorful project. This looks good in terms of curb appeal. And then what they really got is a big gravel patio with some natural rock and then the colorful plants towards the front. I think it draws your eye towards the color very effectively. And if you had some metal seating, French style, outdoor tables and chairs, that would all fit within Zone 0 and not too expensive. And there are places like Be Green in Oakland that offers recycled materials at low prices. Urban Ore in Berkeley, same thing, corrugated metal, rusted metal, kind of get that, garden style look for less money. So I'll end with that slide on what's required in Zone 0 and see if there are more questions. Hand up in the back.
I just had one that you kind of made me think of on one of those slides around like lighting requirements or electrical, if you have any of your analysis, focus on like the combustible plantings, but is there anything,
I haven't heard anything about the electrical. The wildfire prepared home standard includes designs for the building. Like you have to have a certain roof, you have to cover all openings with mesh. So it has a building component to it. Maybe that has something about electricity. I haven't heard that mentioned.
Composite decking is called Class A fire rated. Is that considered non-combustible?
I haven't heard any examples yet of decks that have been built that aren't completely metal, that have not required that Zone 0 boundary around them. So the insurance industry it's like they're making concessions over time. They're saying, okay, we've showed that this is okay, so we're willing to accept that. But they're very conservative about what they accept. So people have said to me, what about compost mulch? That seems to help with fire. The insurance industry is not interested in compost mulch yet. They're not ready for that step. So I wouldn't think, if it's a fiber cement deck and it's not combustible because it's a Class A material, it should qualify. But I haven't seen it yet. So what's happening in Trex is plastic, isn't it? Yeah, and I wouldn't think a meltable, toxic-smelling plastic when it burns is going to be accepted as fire safe. But again, all I know is they're being very conservative about this, and what they've done in Paradise, an organization called Rebuild Paradise, has brought insurance industry people to the town and showed them things and persuaded them over time that these homes are ready to be insured with a standard conventional policy. So it's going to take advocacy. And I'm glad we have an activist insurance department at the state, but cities and neighborhood groups and fire safe councils are going to have to advocate. And CSAA Insurance wants to come back into some of these markets. I mentioned Mercury Insurance. I don't know if they're here in the East Bay. I know they're out in Paradise. So we'll have to be active in persuading these companies that we are following the IBHS recommendations. It's all proven from their full-scale laboratories, and that's where I would go with my argument.
Is there professionals or a way of getting your home certified that you meet these requirements, and then that can be presented to the insurance company?
There's a process, and there's an hour-long tutorial on YouTube how to get certified as a wildfire-prepared home. And the website is wildfireprepared.org, I think, from IBHS. So there's a process you don't have to hire someone to do. You can do it yourself.
And they accept whatever you tell it, you fill out forms?
I'm sure you have to show photographs, and maybe there's an inspection. I haven't done it yet. See a hand up over here?
I have Mercury. I have a very large carport that's open on the driver's side, the driveway side, and also the side of the home. And that concerns me. What could be done about that?
It's not metal, is it?
No.
Yeah, I think that, well, I don't know what Mercury said about it. What did Mercury say?
I haven't had a problem yet with my insurance. I'm just anxious.
Not yet, uh-huh.
I'm trying to think of how to make the neighborhood safer, which brings up another thing. What about your neighbor when he's got huge overhanging trees next to his house?
Right, let's hope we all have decent relationships with our neighbors. I don't always myself, but, you know.
They're tenants and I don't know who the landlord is.
Oh, uh-huh. Well, that's a good thing about city regulations coming in, because then that forces people to talk to each other and resolve things. But for your insurance, as I understand it, it's just up to your property line. So if you've done what you need to do to address the ember risk, that should be what the insurance company cares about. The carport may be a problem. They may want 5 feet around the carport, and that may go beyond your property. So, I don't know. Mine would. If I had to go 5 feet beyond my driveway is my property line, so that would be tough. I see that might be a vulnerability, a carport.
You can skin his carport with a hardy backer. I have my entire house I've retrofitted with a hardy backer
That'd be great.
and fiberboard, and it's really easy to apply. You do it with a roofing nail gun. The hardy backer you get at Home Depot anywhere. It's wood grain, or you can get the complete smooth. They come in 12-foot sections, and they're for siding on a home. But you could put that onto your carport over the wood because it doesn't burn.
That's a great tip, thank you. Great, and hopefully that'll persuade them. Okay, I think I'm out of time. Hardy. It's a fiber cement board, it's often called. Thanks. I think one more question, then I should hand off to the next speaker.
So if you're looking at your zones, here's your tree trunk, but here's your tree foliage. I'm assuming it's foliage.
The foliage is the problem. In the Berkeley Ember program, trees can stay in the zero zone, but they have to be limbed up about 6 feet above the roof, maybe more. And they have to be trimmed up, I think, 10 feet above the ground. Okay, I'm going to wrap up.
One last question about fencing. So if you have a gate that abuts the house, and then you have a fence that runs parallel to the house, but the fence is within 5 feet, do you have to replace that section of fence as long as you put in a metal gate?
Oh yeah, you have to get all that wood out of that 0 to 5 foot zone.
Because I could have sworn I saw in Berkeley side a fire chief saying no, but is
Well,
that
they're trying to ease into this, and if you have fire insurance, you're not, your back's not against the wall to try to figure out how to get a standard plan. So if you have fire insurance and Berkeley's saying, well, we're going to ease in and not make you take that fence out, that's great. But if at some point your insurance company drops you and you have to qualify using this wildfire prepared home standard, that would not meet that standard. So Berkeley's program is trying to ease in.
okay? So we have to have both a metal gate and then fencing.
Or shift the fence. I don't know if it's on your property line.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And hopefully you won't get to that point because your insurance company won't drop you. Okay, thank you everyone for your attention. I appreciate it.